Hi, today's video I want to talk about how to flip property in 2023. There's lots of different ways to do this, and the best thing is it doesn't matter how much cash you've got or experience in property. I'm going to walk you through some of these strategies on how you can do this and how you can make chunks of cash in 2023 flipping property. So what we're going to talk about is flipping contracts, back-to-back flips, auction flips, and finally retail flips. Now this starts with the least amount of cash available, also the lowest risk, down to the most amount of risk and capital needed. So let's start with, if you're completely new to property or you've got very limited cash available, then flipping of contracts is probably something you're going to want to start with. Now people have different names for this in the industry: deal packaging, property sourcing, flipping, whatever you want to call it. But let me keep it really simple. It's all the same thing, whatever the terminology. But you find a property and you're going to try and buy some value or agree some value with a seller. So what I mean by that is, let's suppose you find a property worth £100,000. That's what it's worth today. And then you agree with the seller to buy it for £80,000. So you've agreed a £20,000 or a 20% equity spread in the property. Now what that means to a lot of our property investors is its value. They're able to walk in and buy that property, and they've got instant 20% or £20,000 of instant equity. That's very valuable. Now the best part is, you as a middleman don't have to buy it. You're just getting the seller to agree it, and because you've negotiated that discount, it becomes very valuable, especially from our property investors' point of view. So you can charge a property investor up to £5,000 typically for finding a property, agreeing a really good price, and that's what they'll pay you for that type of deal, a flipped contract. And it's very low risk because you're not having to buy it and get mortgages or debt. You're literally just getting a bit of paper signed and getting somebody to buy that property and complete on it. Very, very low risk. And it's how I started initially, and I built up my cash pot and my experience, and I progressed to more experienced type strategies and other types of strategies which I'm going to share with you now. So another strategy is back-to-back flips. So let's use the previous case. Let's suppose you've got some cash now and you've got some experience in property and you want to go to the next level. You want to try some of these other strategies which can make more money, but have a little bit more risk attached to them, especially if you do this on your own. However, if you work with us at obviously Fast Property Partners, we are at your side for all your deals, and we support you and help you make sure you're not making mistakes, because it can be quite costly if you get it wrong. So with back-to-back flips, how it works, let's use a previous example numbers as an example for this back-to-back flip. Let's suppose you find a property worth 100, you've secured it at 80 with the seller, but you want to make some more money. You don't want to just make up to £5,000 fee selling it to an investor. You want to make more money. So what you could do is you could buy it at £80,000, so start the legal and conveyancing process to purchase it for £80,000, but then you find a buyer to pay you more money for the property. Now let's suppose you find a buyer to pay you £90,000. They've still got £10,000 equity in it. Some people are more than happy with that, but you've also got a £10,000 overage or spread in it between £80,000 and the £90,000 that you've sold it for. So you don't need to tell the seller, the initial seller, that you found someone to buy it for £90,000, because it's called a back-to-back. So you're initially going to buy it for £80,000, but the same day you're going to complete with your new buyer at £90,000, and you're going to collect the difference in the middle, in this case £10,000. Very clever strategy, and it's called back-to-back. The best part is you don't need a lot of money for it, and if you get the timings right where you complete simultaneously, you buy it and you complete the same day, there's lots of benefits in that. You haven't got the risk of holding it. You might have many questions around this, and obviously feel free to drop some comments in the comments box below as your questions come up in your mind, and I'll try my best to get back to you on them. So that's back-to-back flips, very lucrative, and a much more lucrative way than the first strategy, but there's a bit more risk attached to this one as well. Auction flips. Now this is also very good, and we've been doing a lot of these recently, where we get a property agreed with a seller at a really good price, similar to what we've been talking about so far, deep discount. Now these could be problem properties, properties with short leases. Ultimately, we've got to see the value in them. Now let me give you an example of a recent one we did not too long ago. This was a flat which had a short lease on it. Now if it's got a short lease, typically anything less than 70 or 65 years, anything less than that, generally mortgage lenders won't lend on them with a short lease. Now the lease needs to then really be renewed, and you get something over 125 years, a new lease in place, and the value then goes back up. So we're able to secure this at £50,000, this property with a short lease. Now what we did with our knowledge, because we're experienced and we know how to do this, we were very confident we could get that lease extended, and we knew how much we could get it done for. We spoke to solicitors and people who've got the knowledge to tell us how much the cost is going to be. And what we did, we served a notice on the seller who's selling it, which allows us to get the lease extended, and we can assign that extension to the incoming buyer. So we don't pay for the lease extension. We didn't want that added cost. We wanted to sell that added benefit at auction. So we highlighted that in the auction description, and we bought the property. We had to actually commit to buying it for £50,000, and then with the auctioneer's help, obviously before we bought it, we had a word with the auctioneer. He was very confident we would get at least £75,000 with the lease extension documentation in place, so we didn't have to actually extend the lease. It didn't cost us anything, but just with that bit of paperwork, the section 42 notice, we were able to then put that value goes up of that asset, and we already got it a really good price at £50,000 because we were able to get the price down, obviously because there was a problem with the seller just didn't know how to extend the lease, wasn't experienced in any of that, and we took control of the property. We bought it, and then we put it to auction with this section 42 notice in place, and it actually sold for 90. So we were over the moon, and this is the best thing about auction flips. You never know what they're going to go for, but we had cross-checked it with the auctioneer to start with to make sure we knew what it was roughly going to sell for, because they're doing auctions all the time. They know exactly, or they know generally what it's going to go for at auction. So they said it'll go for about 75, but it went for 90. So we were over the moon with that, and we made a really good profit margin. So that's how auction flips work, and I wanted to relate that to a real, obviously, case study that we've done recently as well. I want to talk about retail flips as well. So this is a type of flip you can do, and this is the highest type of risk, especially in today's climate. Now, just actually backtracking a bit, it's really important. With the auction one, you're in and out of them really quick. So it took 2 months to do the one I was talking about. But with retail flips, this is where the risk comes in. So you may well find a property that's, say, worth 100. You buy it for 80, and you think, I'm going to flip it to anybody and everybody on the open market. You're just going to find an estate agent, and they'll put it on Rightmove, they'll market it, and they'll try and find someone to buy it for 100. But by the time you've taken off all the costs, and certainly your holding costs for completion, and completions are taking a lot longer now with mortgage lenders, it's very risky to do retail flips. But on some properties, it can really work well, especially ones where you add value. So think if you've got big bedrooms in a property and you decide to chop them up, put more bedrooms in them, you can in some cases drastically increase the value. And if you've already bought it at a discount, you're further pushing that value right up. So there's plenty of margin in some of these flips, so you can actually flip them out to retail buyers. But we like to do the auction flips because the faster turnaround, the more guaranteed. If you've got a buyer, they're less likely to pull out. But if you've got a buyer with a retail flip, they can pull out at any time in the conveyancing. If something happens with a mortgage, they can pull out. Whereas with auctions, you don't get that. As soon as that hammer falls, they're committed to buying the property. So this is why we like it, and you leave a little bit more in it for the other people coming in. On the auction side, you've got to leave a little bit of margin in for them as well, but it helps us churn our cash and still do these flips and make capital. So in today's market, retail flips are very risky in my opinion. because of the market's a little bit unstable and people's confidence around property. So you know, the auction flips is probably better at the moment. But these are some of the types of flips you can do. And like I say, the ones I talked about right at the start, if you've got no experience and no cash, then you can really just find these deals, put them together and sell them on. That's how I started. We're still doing that today, but we're doing all this other stuff as well. I'm talking about all these other creative type of flips that most people just aren't aware of. So if this video has been useful, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments box if you want to see any specific content from us, and we want to provide you guys with some decent education free of charge, and just really get to understand the property business. And those of you that are really interested and want to get involved with this kind of stuff, then head over to fastpropertypartners.com